Started at the beginning of the year with a $1,200 hydro bill that surprised us.
In the last few months, my bills have more than doubled. My last bill was $1,180. Just paid that. 4 days later, I just got an additional bill 4 days later for $928. This continues. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have just 3 of us in the house, small business. Probably have to sell the house, downsize.
I don't get any answers. I get treated rudely. I get frustrated. And I'm like other people here. I don't even want to call you anymore. I am so fed up. I want our government, our corrupt government, to do something about this.
Yeah, it looks as though a lot of people are upset about their hydro bills. Those are just some of the customers that are out there. Vic Fideli is the Ontario PC finance critic and Nipissing MPP. He joins us via Skype, as well as Rebecca Thompson here in studio. Rebecca, I mean, let's get a little bit of a background on this debt retirement charge. It's going to be a credit of, what, $5.60 a month?
Yeah, I mean, Ontario taxpayers have been seeing this on their hydro bills for quite some time. You know, it's a debt that carries over from 15 years ago. You know, the Ontario PCs can probably, and Vic Fideli can probably speak to this, but theoretically, the Ontario Liberals should have already paid down the debt. This is the debt from Ontario Hydro days before Ontario Hydro was split up. You know, $5 off people's bills isn't really going to be that much, but let's be clear here. The Ontario Liberals have been suffering a huge scandal with the gas plant scandal. They have been seeing enormous trouble, like the clips that you just saw from all those residents who are getting hydro bills that are sometimes 50% or 75% more than what they're supposed to, because there's been a huge screw up with the billing practices with Ontario hydro bills. You know, not to mention the fact that the Ontario Liberals have been long under fire for introducing the Green Energy Act, or clean renewable power, wind power, solar power, which to some people's estimates is costing Ontario taxpayers $4 to $5 billion, because what essentially it is subsidizing wind and solar power that in many occasions we don't need. We have a surplus of it. We end up having to sell it to neighboring jurisdictions for much more money. Okay, so let's get to Vic Fideli on this, because as I recall, Vic, it goes back to the repayment bill of $7.8 billion back in 1998, and your position is that it's all paid off or not?
Well, it's not just my position, Pat. It's the position of the Auditor General. Back in November of 2011, the auditor told us that $8.7 billion has been collected to pay off the $7.8 billion debt retirement charge. So back in 2011, it was already paid off.
So there's a billion plus, if you will, kicking out there. What are they using the money for, or do we know?
Well, we learned 2 things. We put out a newsletter in January that was an intense look at the debt retirement charge, and we learned 2 things. We learned 3 things, actually. They collect about $1 billion a year, just shy of $1 billion a year is one of the first. One of the other things that we learned was that they borrowed $4 billion more and put it on the tab of the debt retirement charge back in 2004. But if you look at the annual report of 2004, 5, 6, all the way up to 2012, they never reported that. They waited until the 2011 election was over and then retroactively recorded the $4 billion loan back in 2004. So if you look at the annual report today, it shows you that they borrowed the money. They did not use it for hydro, so that's the third point. They've been using the money for non-hydro related expenses. Okay, so Vic, then there's the political component of this. I mean, yes, voters will get back $5.60, but no, all of a sudden they have to be transparent about where that debt is going. I mean, that's kind of a risky thing to do politically, isn't it? Well, they've been robbing Peter to pay Paul. The whole problem is that these people have been on a spending spree for 10 years, especially this last year, particularly this budget, where we see they're going on a $5.7 billion spending spree. If they didn't have this spending addiction that they have, they wouldn't have needed to borrow that $4 billion in 2004, and we would have had that debt retirement charge retired, when it was actually paid off back in 2012.
Yeah, all good points, Vic. You know, Rebecca, this all happens at the same time that the clean energy benefit, which was put in there because they realized that the people were paying too much. The clean energy benefit expires at the beginning of next year, or 2016.
Yeah, around the same time that this
Right.
this other debt fee is going to be erased. So essentially, you know, it all washes out in the end. But what we do know, and the Ontario government admitted this just several months ago, is that electricity rates will be going up over the next 5 years by 42% and then even higher. So the average price, if the average price today of a hydro bill is around $125, it's going to be going up to $178 within the next 5 years and then almost $200 in the next just under 10 years. So this is the challenge in Ontario. And when you look at manufacturers and Ontario's big power users, there's a huge association. They put out a report just a couple of months ago indicating that Ontario now has, for the manufacturing sector, the highest energy rates in North America. Which we've heard before, but they've specifically said that they pay up to 9.4 cents per kilowatt hour compared to somewhere like New York, which pays 5.6 cents per kilowatt hour, Midwestern states 3.2 cents. So no wonder why you see manufacturing jobs being lost and these companies moving elsewhere. Ontario once had a competitive edge, which was that Ontario's electricity prices were low. This was, 20, 30 years ago. And now it's completely the opposite. And this is the challenge that the Ontario government is facing because they're the ones over the past 10 years who have made decisions that have really put an extra burden not only on residential but manufacturing companies for hydro rates.
Yeah, driven up the cost of electricity. Rebecca and Vic, we got to take a commercial break. We'll be right back. Well, Vic Fideli and Rebecca Thompson are here talking about electricity, and we've been talking about this debt retirement charge that's out there, but there's also a suggestion that the Liberals could put in, let more companies into the Industrial Conservation Initiative, the ICI, and the Industrial Electricity Incentive, IEI. Vic Fideli, I mean, what are these designed to do, and is this a good idea?
Well, they're platitudes to try to appease some of the industries who are continuing to talk about leaving Ontario. Look, we all have heard the stories about the companies who have left, like Heinz and Caterpillar and Kellogg's. They're still making ketchup, they're still making earth-moving equipment, they're still making cereal. They just don't make it in Ontario anymore, primarily because their hydro bills are too high, their taxes are too high, and there's too much red tape. So while they're looking at the ICI program, it's almost too little too late in terms of these industries who have already left. They need to take some real action, do what our party wants to do, and get to the real nub of what's wrong with high energy prices, and that's the Green Energy Act, primarily the FIT program, the feed-in tariff that have brought the wind turbines and the solar panels to Ontario, and that's what's caused your bills to triple compared to where they were in 2003. They're now tripled with, as Rebecca said earlier, another almost 50% will be added in the next 5 years. So there's a real problem here. You can't keep putting a Band-Aid on it. You've got to get to the real issue, Pat.
What's interesting, and maybe Mr. Fideli can answer this, is what the plan entails in terms of getting out of the Green Energy Act. And this may or may not come up if there's an election. If the Ontario Progressive Conservatives want to get out of the Green Energy Act, which would be welcome news to so many people, would there be a cost to canceling any of these contracts? Would they have to go down that road? All the turbines that are going up? What would happen to all these project proposals that are in the hopper right now? And ultimately, would there be a cost to this? And the reason I ask is because Kathleen Wynne and her team of Liberals have said that it would be very costly to get out of these contracts, and getting out of contracts is exactly what people don't want to have to relive, given the nightmare of the gas plant scandal.
Vic, what's your answer there?
A couple of areas on this. Number one, the wind turbines that are up and the contracts that are signed, they stay. That's just plain and simply put. It's the contracts that haven't been approved yet that we will want to cancel before they get in too deep. But you have to look at, again, what the real problem of this is. These contracts, to maintain and to let these go forward, that's where the real cost would be. Think of where your hydro bill was 10 years ago. We were paying 4.3 cents a kilowatt hour. Now we're paying over 13 cents on peak hours. That's 3 times the amount. That's what's killing industry. And the fact that we have the feed-in tariff program, these rich subsidies, the fact that we pay the states and pay Quebec every night, take our surplus power, the fact that when we do make power from wind during noon, let's say, when we already have contracted for the power, we have to pay, shut down Niagara Falls transmission. That's about $300 million a year. And we commit the ultimate sin by shutting down our nuclear plants about 5 times a year when the wind really does blow. That's about $80 million a year. So $500 million in payments to the states in Quebec, $300 million for shutting down Niagara, $80 million. That's $880 million we pay a year, and that's only with about 2,000 megawatts of wind. Kathleen Wind wants to take this problem to 10,000 megawatts of wind power. That's 5 times the problem we have today. When they say your rates will go up 50%, that's based on the 2,000 megawatts we have today. If we go to 10,000 megawatts as the Liberals plan, you can't even begin to calculate what your hydro bill is going to be. That's why we need to step in, win this election, cancel the FIT program, and turn Ontario around.
Yeah, there's got to be an election first, Vic, through all this whole process. In the meantime, when you look at something like this, subsidies really being given to corporations, is that a form of corporate welfare, or is that something that is a good idea to win back some business to this province?
Well, when I wrote our party's energy white paper back in May of 2012, what Tim Hudak said is, look, we need good ideas to turn Ontario around, and energy is one of the biggest problems we have. So let's put these 13 paths out, and one of them was a northern or a resource and industrial hydro rate. You need to do this to create jobs in Ontario. Again, Kellogg's, Heinz, Caterpillar, those are 3 examples of companies who have left. High hydro rates, high taxes, red tape are killing these businesses in Ontario. So we need to take the energy file and turn it around. When you cancel the FIT program, it's a good start for us, but we've got to have a resource and industrial rate for using the power, especially off-peak power. The power that we're paying the states in Quebec to take, we should be using that power to sell at a reduced rate to the industries to use it off-peak and begin hiring people in Ontario again.
Vic, great discussion. Thanks very much.
Great, Pat. Great, Rebecca.
Appreciate it.